How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Excellent. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Excellent. So sorry I'm running a minute late. It's been a bit of a quiet morning, but I think we have a good group here. And again, it's great that we're able to do these conversations. As you were discussing, like we're super excited to be investing in you and like everything that you're doing. It's been super awesome to get to know you and kind of the scope of your work. What we've been doing with some people is just setting up obviously these conversations because a lot of people don't know you, right? And we want to get a great group of like co-investors around the table. Just honestly, it's like a pretty open-ended forum and conversation where you can introduce yourself, what you've been up to, where you're going, like kind of what your current businesses are, and like the whole 9 yards. But it's pretty loose from a story perspective. And then of course, we're recording this for later, obviously, and then people I'm sure will ask questions in the Q&A and things like that. But like with that said,
Yeah,
do you
sure.
want to like start by saying like, I mean, again, like we're obviously excited at Slow Ventures to be investing and doing this with you, but like, do you want to start by just kind of giving your backstory and kind of how this all came about?
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm a YouTuber, as you can tell. So I have 3 YouTube channels. One is the largest one is where I teach people English, non-native speakers. So it's mostly like explaining American culture and how to speak English. The second one is called Silicon Valley Girl. So I moved to Silicon Valley 6 years ago to build my company, and I'm just describing, like documenting whatever is happening to me. It's more like a lifestyle / business. And there's another one in Russian because I started my YouTube career back in Russia back in 2014. And I have more than 5 million followers across those 3 channels. And they're like completely different groups of people because I have like Russians who want to start an international career. I have language learners and I have entrepreneurs. So in Silicon Valley, like I meet people and they would come up and say, oh, I just moved from Seattle because I saw your blog. So that's pretty cool, like having all those different demographics that I'm able to talk to. I also have an Instagram with over 700,000 followers. That has recently became like a mom's blog. People just love to, what I found is like you can be an expert in a field, but then people also want to see your life. They want to see how you deal with regular things and they want to see your approach. And then I have a TikTok with 1.3 million followers. And then I have like a Substack, like some small stuff, and a Twitter account. Because I've been doing this for a while, I've built a team around that. So people ask me how I'm able to do 3 videos a week and then have a baby and have another baby on the way, etc. So I have 2 editors, 2 thumbnail designers, 2 community managers, a salesperson, and then I have a team around my YouTube school. So we have this course for YouTubers and YouTube community managers. It was taken by over 4,000 people. And it's been growing really well. We're coming up with new courses. And I'm also working on an app for YouTubers because I see that the main problem for content creators is to come up with a topic that would resonate with their audience. Sometimes you produce a video and the audience is like, I want something different. So that platform would allow them to first plan content and then get funding and upvotes from there. So it's like GoFundMe for creators, I guess. But it's like, it's still in works. And so basically, yeah, when I got connected to some, first of all, so I'm making money already and it's like around 100K a month, but then I have my costs, etc. And I thought, like, if I get this funding, what am I going to use it for? And so I think for me, it's being part of this creator economy. So being able to invest more in the product than just taking a lot of brand deals. And also investing in startups and creators who are, building something new in the system. But I can talk about this more. But this is basically my story. Yeah,
totally. And I think one thing that might be helpful for kind of people listening in or kind of figuring out kind of how you come at this is, I think what you're doing is like, it's not, I wouldn't say unique, but it's a little different than the story of like a traditional creator who has like one persona or brand for one audience, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you have like a few different communities you've built, right? Each of which are scaling really nicely. Like you produce really compelling content for them, et cetera. But maybe you can talk a little bit about like how that evolved for you, like if that makes sense, and like how you think about, when you think about yourself as a creator, what the kind of like the thread is to it. Is it just that like your voice and like great content creation, or like how do you think about which communities you're building up at any given time?
Yeah, I just think there are so many, like I'm three different personalities. First of all, like because I was born and raised in Russia, I'm an immigrant in the US. Then the second, I'm an entrepreneur because I've been building companies since I was 21. And then I've been learning English for a while. And then I moved to Silicon Valley. So it's just, I try to incorporate everything in one channel, but then I just realized that there aren't a lot of people who want to be everything like me, but
Yeah.
there are huge groups of people who are just maybe interested in business or maybe just interested in language learning. So for me, it's just developing all of those personality traits that I have, and I've realized that I've been doing this for 6 years, and I've realized this is something I can do consistently because I enjoy it. Even like sometimes when I don't know, when I was in St. Petersburg last year in November, December, it was so dark and I was so depressed. I was still like producing that content every single week. So I think this is something that keeps me going through any times, like even the hardest times. So yeah, just talking to people and being able to get that feedback. Initially, I started because I felt lonely when I was applying for MBA and master's programs in the US, and I was back in Russia, and I was like, I'm probably the only Russian who is applying to those programs and hoping to get a full ride scholarship because I couldn't afford that myself. And I decided that I would just document my journey, and maybe I would meet someone during that journey, and I was able to get like first hundreds of views, and then I was able to get the full ride scholarship, and I was like, oh my god. And so it started growing. So I think it's just this natural instinct to share information, and I like learning new stuff and then just sharing it with people.
Got it. I mean, that obviously means like hyper authentic, right? It seems like you've kind of like built channels and communities around like your major life moments, right?
Yeah,
Which
I
I think is
never had any expectations. I never thought it's going to grow to something bigger. I was just focused on like, doing my own thing because I was building the study abroad company. I was like, I would just, talk to people on YouTube, let's see how it goes. And then suddenly it's like, boom.
So when you think about that, I'm kind of curious about like, again, like your process and how I think people would be about like how you think about like, all right, so like is the plan to do 4 more verticals, you know what I mean? Like around different, as you see things, or is it more that like you think you have like in the kind of communities you've built so far, things you're going to go way deeper? I mean, obviously the channels continue to grow a bunch, right? Which is great. But I'm kind of curious, like how you think about scaling your content and your communities effectively, like horizontally versus deeper on like kind of trends you've hit.
Yeah, I think I'm going deeper in terms of like communities because I already have those millions of followers, and for me, it's figuring out what exactly they need and how it can be even more helpful. And so this is why I plan my content around like I'm trying to do 1 video a month that would probably go viral to just continue with the growth, and then 3 more videos that would deepen my connection with the audience. So I'm doing more vlogs these days and just showing my life. So I think I came to a conclusion that, well, I don't want to be like this YouTuber who's like producing videos just because they want to get views. I want to be a YouTuber who's meaningful and who's able to change lives. Because again, for me, the biggest reward that I get is when I meet a person in the street and she says, I came from Taiwan and I got into Stanford after watching your videos. And I'm like, wow, this is impact that I can produce. So I think, yeah, I'm going more into like producing more deeper connection, but channels are still growing. Like it's 100K a month every month, and even YouTube team is surprised how consistent with the growth. But yeah, it's really cool.
Is it talking about like in terms of the like audience and how you like monetize that? Obviously, like there's the AdSense type stuff like directly on YouTube, the sponsorship you talked about a little bit, right? And then you and I have talked about like products effectively, right?
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to talk about briefly like what you see as like the next obvious products effectively, and like what you're experimenting with right now, and like how you basically even talk a little bit maybe like how monetization works for you today and how you think it's going to work for you in like a year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so Google AdSense is something that I call passive income, just because I keep producing content and YouTube keeps paying you, which is pretty cool. And even like if I stop for a couple of months, they would still continue paying because they pay you for videos that you've already produced. And so that one, it's around 20K, but it's it depends on whatever is going on with YouTube. But there, I know how to maximize that. So when I start talking about like investing or personal finance in my business channel, then it goes up. With paid partnerships, the strategy would be to focus on longer term contracts, because so a couple of weeks ago I signed this 50K contract. Normally it's like from 5 to 8K contracts, and this one was for 50K because they also they would also use my face for a year. It's a company called vidIQ, so they're using my face in their ads. And I just find those contracts a lot more rewarding because I don't need to necessarily promote the company in my videos. They just use my footage, which is pretty cool. So we're going to focus on longer term contracts. And in terms of products, so we have 3 YouTube courses for different niches. And the goal is to raise the check. So right now it's like $400, and we're thinking of building cohort-based live courses. So we could appeal to different categories of YouTubers, and so we could raise the check to like 1,000 or 1,300. And then obviously I'm working on an app that would have monetization. This GoFundMe, they take like a percentage of transactions. So this is something down the road. And we're also working on a community for YouTubers, because this would provide recurrent revenue. And I'm also like studying subscriptions at Stanford, taking their course. So I'm looking into, again, deepening connections and building longer term relationships with the customers. So once they take the course, they're going to start using an app, they're going to be a part of the community. So it's a long-term relationship.
Fair enough. Is there anything that like you've in the last few years, like you were really excited about, or you thought would be really grow really quickly, or be a really good business that turned out to like not work?
Great question. I think, well, some marketing experiments, but no, I don't think there was like something I thought it's going to be huge, because I always try to, lower down my expectations and be realistic. So I don't think so. Like even for this app, I know even if it doesn't blow up, I know it's going to be useful for my students. So I'm always trying to be more realistic than like, hoping for, oh my God, it's going to blow up.
Of course. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, look, the things that got me just, really excited about kind of working with you, and I think, you're uniquely doing an awesome job at is a few things. Like one is like, you clearly just love producing content, right? Which I think you have to do, right? You have to love it. And it has to be something you'd almost do for free, because it is a ton of work, right? And over a long period of time, it's like almost everyone in this ecosystem, like, flames out, you know what I mean? Because there's just like but if you truly love it and it's like what you'd be doing anyway, I think that's like really awesome. 2 is like, I do think it's like kind of unique. I mean, it's very authentic, but also unique that you have like a few of these different communities, right? That are like all profitable, good businesses, right? But that you've been able to grow up. And like, again, I think that's different than like people are like, it's in some ways you're more diversified that way, if that makes sense.
I think it really helps, because if some channel like doesn't perform the way I expected it to perform, then the other channel performs well, and you're like, you don't get it.
Well, and you can follow the bets of like what works in like in interesting ways. And then 2, it's like, I think it's interesting how, I mean, I obviously this resonates with me a lot. Like you're really approaching this stuff like businesses, right? In like a very professional way, in terms of being like, okay, like you have this community of like YouTubers, right? Or professional people that are following you. Like, how do I like serve that community and grow it up? Or like the kind of cross-border MBA stuff or whatever it's going to be. Like, you kind of take it. It's like an interesting, it's interesting to simultaneously be very authentic and love the content, but then also like treat it like businesses, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that also helps with staying consistent, because once you treat it as a business, once you have a team in place, then it means you just focus on your superpower, which is talking to a camera and not like editing or which I figure out for myself.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. I mean, like, you're doing like on the order of like 100K a month, right? Like, talk to me about like, and to the community about like the team that's helping you produce these things, like how you think it changes and evolves over time. Like, what do you need, like from a team perspective, that you don't have that you're going to need in like a year, if that makes sense?
So yeah, in terms of the team, it's mostly contractors that I have from all over the world, and the goal is to build something more local, because it's about time zones and also understanding cultures, because right now we're very good at understanding the international culture, but I also want to deepen in the like American / immigrant community here. So I need a team here as well. This is what what I'm hoping for in this year and next year. And also just having, again, more people with experience of building courses. So my team has been like, oh my God, I like this person. I onboard them, and they're not necessarily better experts in the field that I am. And this has been, I think this has been my mistake as an entrepreneur, because I always just hire people that I like, and not based on, they tell you need to hire people who are better experts than you in their field. And I feel that I'm slightly better, I don't know, than everyone. So my goal is to hire people who are smarter than me, like building courses or product design or whatever, because right now it's mostly me. This is one of my main goals as an entrepreneur in this creator space.
Fair enough. So what have you, I mean, just bigger picture on a personal level, like you've had like a pretty obviously interesting life story and career so far, and you're talking about like what hasn't worked on the business side. What about like more broadly, like what have you failed at?
It's like I don't know how to describe failure as a YouTuber. Like you do something really wrong and then people just start hating you. That would sound like a failure.
Well, I mean, even just more broadly in life. I mean, I think like what I've always found is like entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like what have you like? I don't know. What have you not succeeded so far in life? Because you are one of these people who just like seems like you've succeeded at like everything you've tried. There must be something you haven't succeeded at.
Well, not really. Like there. It's just I don't see those things as failures. I think for me, the only success for criteria of success is whether I'm enjoying what I'm doing or not. And if I'm like not enjoying, then I should probably think about like editing, delegating, etc.
Yeah.
So I don't think success is like determined by the way people, I don't know, the number of subscribers and the number of views. It's just the feedback that you get from the audience. So I never see it as failure. Yes, I make mistakes, like I produce content that my subscribers don't like sometimes, or they feel disappointed that I said something last year and then I changed my mind because they want you to be consistent. But it's such a huge learning process, especially like from psychological standpoint. Like you just learn how to deal with that and how to deal with negativity. So I don't even, so if you describe failure for me, I would
no, fair enough. I just think it's an important thing to get a flavor on. I think that's a reasonable answer. Like it like depends how you look at these things, for sure. So I want to go to one of the questions that just popped up, which is just maybe talking a little bit more about like the topics and the categories of the courses. Like we kind of hit on this very briefly, but maybe you go to a little more depth for people with like, okay, so you have like obviously the YouTube and ad revenue, and you are building courses. Like which courses have you built so far? Like how have those gone? What are you building next, etc.?
Yeah, so we have this course for YouTubers in 2 languages, one in English, one in Russian. So basically for everyone who wants to start on YouTube and make it an income stream. And it's about starting and then building a team around it, delegating, and giving people ideas how they can monetize before they actually hit 1,000 subscribers and get monetized by YouTube. So it's mostly like for creators who want to be entrepreneurs. And the second course, well, this is 1, 2, and then the third course is for YouTube community managers. Like if you want to make money on YouTube, if you want to be in the creator economy, but you don't want to be in front of the camera, you can be the one who comes up with topics for YouTubers, writes scripts, uploads videos, etc. And the next step is what I see is that, for example, a YouTuber's course is still a little broad, and I want to create a course for female creators, like how do you create content as a female, and then how do you create content in English if you're not a native English speaker, which is also a huge niche, and I get a lot of questions about that. How do you understand the culture? And so I'm looking to build those cohort-based courses where we would have less people, because now we have like maybe 200 people per batch, which is in terms of like connecting them together and making it more like a live experience is a little too much. And just raising a check and having smaller groups, that will be the first step, and like testing those niches, because they say you give tremendous value to a small group of people. So my goal is to like find out those niches where I can charge them more and then provide more value. Yeah, so that would be like a short-term goal, and the community as well.
And that makes sense. So with these courses, though, when you can start doing, obviously you have like a few audiences, and like you're getting this competency in just like making a course. Like, are the courses like from your perspective, like connected at all, or do you kind of marketing them more as like one-offs? You know, it's to different people.
Right now it's a one-off, and this is what I don't really like, because there is no retention there. So you kind of can upsell them with the next course that they want to be a community manager, but this is not an ecosystem, and this is why we're working. So June, we're going to start working on the community, which is like paid membership, where you have access to live streams with other YouTubers, professionals, etc., where you get mentorship, where you get access to like closed Slack groups. This is number one. Number two is the app, where they can plan content. So yeah, I see that the problem is it's a one-off thing, and I really want to keep them in our ecosystem.
And just for people's sense of scale, like how many unique like people have you sold courses to so far? Like
it's over 4,000 people, and the check ranges from 400 to 1,000 depending on the course and depending on how much how long is the course and what are the options that they're taking. And so yeah, but again, the thing is, I have so many people in my community, so we need we're also, I didn't mention that we're working on a workbook for creators that we can sell as like a small check, $9. So yeah, a lot of things that we're constantly experimenting with, just to convert more and to make people stick with us.
Fair enough. So yeah, I mean, is it fair to say the way to think about your business, or like kind of the ecosystem you're building overall, is like you have these like channels effectively that are doing very well, they're going very quickly, that are kind of like your total top of funnel. That's kind of monetized obviously through ads, right? Like, and that's ads, both AdSense, but then also some level of sponsorship currently, right?
Yeah.
And then effectively, like when you want to get to much higher like ARPU, or like the people who kind of come out the bottom of that funnel, your core thing right now are these courses, like they're packaged courses that you're selling to people on various topics, right? And like the goal is to make those deeper, and then also potentially expand into other things like community and apps and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the simple way to think about it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool. Well, what else did, I mean, again, like we put this together and just more as like a really quick getting to know you. Obviously, like we have like a deck, and like we're talking to people, you know, broadly about the round, but I think it's just really important also to like, you know, beyond your videos, like hear from you a little bit about the business and things like that. Like what else are like you think people should absolutely know about you and kind of your approach to business and your approach to kind of being a creator?
Yeah, and I like the question that Adam sent me before the session. Like, why don't I just raise money for my companies instead of raising money as a creator? And I think this is a great question, because I would never, like, as a creator, I can never commit to one company fully. Like, and when you invest in a company, you expect a founder to spend 9 to 10 hours a day, you know, without weekends, to work in the company. And as a creator, I'm more focused on like creating content and then building around it. And there is a huge chance that next year I'm like, oh my God, we should do this. And being a part of the whole journey is a lot more rewarding for an investor, and I also feel a lot more honest getting money like that, because I know that I'm sticking to this creator journey, but things that happen around, you know, I'm taking this investing course and I want to invest in creator economy startups, and you can be a part of it, like if you're an investor. So it's just, I'm evolving as a personality in different ways, but something that has been consistent for the past 6 years is me being a creator. So I think like raising money for that is a lot more honest than raising money for just a particular company.
Yeah, and I think for what it's worth, like that's obviously core of the Slow Ventures, like our investment thesis as well, in the whole, in you and in the whole space, right? Which is basically there's this group of people who are building very serious businesses that throw off lots of money and whatever. But unlike being a traditional company where it's like, look, you make widgets and you're always going to make widgets, and maybe you'll make super widgets someday. It's more like you're building a community, right? And the ways you monetize that community, right, or create value for that community are very diverse, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're creating like a brand. I think that's like a very, instead of it being like, we get a brand as the residual of making widgets, it's the other way around, which is the actual thing you're building is the brand and the community, and the products are residual, if that makes sense. Which I think it's kind of the inverse version of that. For
exactly.
Sure. We're aligned on.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, what else? I mean, like, look, I guess the other thing we should probably briefly touch on, and again, like, this isn't going to be widely circulated, so like I think we can talk about it, but like, you know, we'll go to people who are serious potential investors. is just a little bit about like valuation and like how we kind of came up with that. And you and I went back and forth on this, you know, to kind of figure out what we think was fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, do you want to, I mean, I can talk to it all too, but do you want to start and talk a little bit about how you think about valuing your creator business and kind of the conversation there?
Yeah, so we basically came up with three scenarios, the growth scenarios, and I think I have some numbers here. So one is 5% growth, another one is 25% growth year over year in terms of revenue, and the other one is 50% growth. And then we gave them probabilities based on, well, in the past 4 years in terms of revenue, and I've started monetizing basically 4 years ago, I've been growing over 200% year over year, but I also understand that the higher you get, the slower you grow. Hopefully that's going to happen for the next couple of years. But anyways, I understand that the growth might get harder. So we gave them different probabilities, like 40% that it's 5% growth, 55% is 25% growth, and 5% it's 50% growth. And every, I don't know if we could send the model if you're interested, but basically, but basically it's based on whether my channels are growing or not growing, whether I'm coming up with those ideas that blow up in terms of revenue or they don't, whether I get a contract with Netflix or not, which is one of my goals as a creator. And then Sam created this mini model that has all the income streams, and we discounted them. And based on probabilities, we just came up with a valuation.
Yep. Yeah. And I think like just the one way I will like kind of like just add to that is, look, the honest answer is we don't really know, right? Like in terms of exactly how this is going to play out. You know, we basically, the way the deal is set up and what we're doing, we're basically assuming that you'll be able to generate about $30 million, a little bit more than $30 million, like on a risk adjusted basis over your like creator career. Like that's like the thing. And then we're basically obviously, you know, buying a small percentage of that, right? You know, on that basic assumption as a break-even place. You know, interestingly, if you think about this, and I'll just add from a venture math perspective, because a lot of people listening will be kind of venture capitalists, right? Or people who have like a venture background. You know, you're doing a little over $1 million a year right now in top line, right? Which, you know, is better than a lot of startups that we fund, right? Like but it's a very different type of signature on growth and value. And like the valuation, I would argue, is like effectively 2x, right? Is the way in my head, like what a good Series Seed is. So like again, if you just think about this purely, forget the business for a second on a numbers basis, what we're basically saying is like, look, this is a person who's demonstrated success consistently. We're buying into kind of holistically her creator career over a long period of time, right? And then we're basically saying, look, if you just straight lined it and said based on like revenue and where she is now and pretended that this was a traditional business, you'd probably end up at about half the valuation. But, right, like on the flip side, right, this thing has a way more revenue than we would fund something in that level, right? As a company, it's been growing consistently very quickly, right? And there's a ton of optionality in it, right? Which I think is kind of the pure investor side of it, if that makes sense.
I think of me more as an ETF than a risky stock.
Well, I mean, and this is actually, again, like, I mean, not to get too meta, but since you bring it up, I actually think that, you know, working with you, right, for instance, or, you know, other people like you, is a really valuable and interesting hybridization of both of those things, right? Because the ETF characteristic of it is you've consistently demonstrated success, you're making real money, right? Like there's no, you know, crazy things can happen in the world, but in general, like there's very, very high likelihood that you will like index your way into some interesting businesses, right? And
it's pretty diversified as well.
There's diversified that way. But the flip side is it's like it has that character. But the flip side is like, look, I mean, there is a model of the world or things that could happen where either you absolutely crush it, right, with your core audiences, grow much faster, right, than we think, and especially with some investment capital, right, are able to really dramatically capitalize on the courses you're doing and get way bigger, way fast. Like that's one path. You also might get the Netflix deal and 5 other things that like totally change your profile. Like, and so I actually think that's in some ways, again, like not to be too impersonal about this, but like, since we are having an investor conversation, like that's my investor hat on is like, the question is like, okay, if we give you, you know, $1.5 million is about, right, is the current plan we anticipate, will you be able to grow faster meaningfully? I think so, right? Like, I think you're able to spend capital well and like make good bets with that. And then two, like, we're backing you very directly as like a brand and a personality and someone who's successfully built several communities, right? Like, do we think that like effectively not only will get paid back, but there's meaningful upside, right? In terms of what you're doing. And again, I obviously believe the answer is yes to that. So I'm excited.
Thank you. Me too. Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else? Like, again, I think the point of these is just I want to make sure we answer any questions that people have in the chat, or again, like, we're obviously going to share this out as like part of the materials for the investment. Is there anything else you want to talk through or bring up? Oh, we got one more question. Let's just see. The mechanics of the investment. Yeah, so we'll send around like a little summary of the mechanics. So we don't have to go through all of them right now, but I'll just like answer that quickly, which is like, basically, I'll put it this way: we create like an LLC, right, which is effectively a tracker of, you know, all of the different revenue streams that you get, right? Like, instead of like taking those revenue streams personally, they go into the LLC, right, and then effectively, you know, to you, right. The investors are getting a percentage of that LLC, right, or of that investment vehicle, and then there are basically, think of it as we can get into the details here, but like high level, there's like consistent dividends, right, that come off of that, right, on an ongoing basis. And then obviously also, like, for instance, because it can get complicated, if there's like an equity position or things like that, again, that gets assigned to the LLC. So there'll be like consistent dividends on what's going on, and then potentially like, okay, like an equity position or things like that spit out of that LLC as well. That's like the quick version. In terms of valuation, things like that, again, like it's basically, I mean, that's the high level answer, and we can get into the details in writing, just so everyone's on the same page. Cool.
Yeah.
What else? I don't know.
Potentially IPO as a creator. That's something like I'm very positive about the future if no one messes it up like this market, because sometimes like with crypto, something happens, you're like, oh, I hate crypto. So with the creator economy, I think if everything goes well, like I see a lot more potential investing in people. And potentially IPOing as a creator, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and just for the investors in the call, I think when we think about IPOing, we also obviously agree, right, that we believe that there's a big market for investing in people in these formats. And starting out, I think like it's going to be kind of like what we're doing now. It's going to be a little bit more one-off, right, and a little bit more like a venture capital, like early stage model. I suspect at some point there'll be growth equity as well, right, where like maybe in a few years you're crushing it and you're like, man, if I had $100 million, right, like I'd be able to do X, Y, and Z and build a way bigger brand. And I bet there'll be a growth equity model for that. And then eventually, like, there's absolutely no reason to not believe that like these communities with community leaders, right, like will effectively go public, right, like in some form. And I think there are people who are kind of working on that in different ways. I think the thing to keep in mind is, obviously, just from a technicalities perspective, you can't take an LLC public, right? And so the thing to keep in mind is that like we're doing this as the right model for creators at this stage, right? With the understanding that like incentives are deeply aligned, that like if, for instance, we get to a place where it does make sense to do an IPO or something else, like there'll end up being some corporate restructuring effectively. But it's certainly a path that exists and we believe will be interesting to explore. So
bigger future.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, we don't need to take more time. I just wanted to make sure, I appreciate you taking the time to kind of do like a live little chat thing and record it so we can share it around. You know, this just from a deal perspective, like Slow Ventures, again, like we're anchoring this, we're excited to do it. We're doing like a bunch of the paperwork and hard stuff now in terms of that type of stuff. And like, we're obviously very excited to kind of basically open this up to great people who want to participate. Oh, and Adam's messaging. I was going to close, but it sounds like there's one more question we should answer. Sorry. This will be like a little bit of a funny. You as a video person are probably like, this is a terrible video, but that's fine. All right. Why this rather than a line of credit? What supports being in the apps she's building? What are the synergies provided wouldn't occur had she not signed with you? All right. I can answer that to start, I guess. So do you want to talk about, I'm actually kind of curious. Have you ever pursued getting like a line of credit?
No, not really. Because again, for me, it is money as well. But for me, first is like networking with people, getting in this creator economy, and having this peace of mind that I can now focus on more meaningful things and deepen connections and hire better professionals. I would come to this later, like maybe I would need a couple more years to grow my revenue to that stage where I'll be okay. I can hire this expensive person and I can now focus on this product instead of taking all the product placements. But so yeah, it's getting this peace of mind and focus. And second is also networking being part of this new economy.
Cool. And I'll add 2 other pieces to that, just because I think from the research we've been doing and looking at this market. One is the early stage credit markets effectively for borrowing money. It is a little bit like venture debt, right? Which is, it's very hard to borrow money against early stage businesses that don't already have meaningful equity built up or into them. It's not impossible, but the rates are not very good. There's not a very deep market for it, et cetera. So even how in like Silicon Valley, there is a venture debt market and people do use the venture debt market, but those venture debt lenders generally will only follow equity investors, right? Meaning like there's already like a meaningful equity slice, or a piece of equity in the business that you can borrow against or on top of or around. So I don't think that market really exists yet very much. And then I'd say like in terms of support and things like that, I mean, I think there's this thing in the talent world. The closest thing to this in the talent world in a lot of ways is agencies, right? It is kind of like creative agencies or some collectives around YouTube, et cetera. And those are not equity investments, right? Those are much more like, okay, like I'll promote you or like rep you for X% of everything you do. It's a very professional service driven model. What we see happening is a move much towards a venture capital model, right? Where what do venture capitalists do? It's like we put the investment in, we obviously are aligned deeply, and then we try to create networks of knowledge and providers and things like that like are useful to the entrepreneurs. But unlike being a talent agent, which says, look, just do your talent and we'll take care of everything else, right? Which is like kind of that model. It's much more a model of like acknowledging that building brands and entrepreneurship and these types of things, it's a lonely exercise, right? Like it is you, right? And you're to succeed. And it doesn't mean that like that your investors can't be helpful in places with the right introductions or, communities or ideas, but it is way less formal, right? Than a talent agent being like, look, I'll put in sweat equity and I'll do all of the business while you do your thing. Like this is much more of a, no, you are building the businesses. We don't know your communities. We don't know the products specifically, but we can be capital partners, right? And we can kind of help provide some of that early stage, perspective that we do with normal companies. So that's the idea. Cool. Any more questions? Last call. I'm going to quickly end so that we don't end up trying to end and then having a question, but questions are great. Cool. All right. Thank you everyone who's watching this live and as looking at this as part of the diligence materials. Again, like we're super excited about this investment.
Me too. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for putting this together. Thank you.
All right. Thanks guys. Bye.